Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanking you for joining us for another N-able webinar today. Benefits of planning cybersecurity tabletop exercises. We do have quite a few attendees today, so we're going to give them the benefit of a minute or two to get joined in before we get started. If this is your first time joining us for an N-able webinar, pleasure to have you with us. If you're joining because you attended the Cyber Resiliency Summit this month, welcome back. Hopefully, we'll be able to cram quite a bit of information into the hour that we have set aside for today's webinar. Plus, also be sending you away with some handouts and some useful templates that you can start looking at to build out your own tabletop exercises and some of the supporting material for tabletops that you might not always consider needing. We're going to be going through a lot of theory today, but also you should be walking away with practical information and knowledge. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started for the first few minutes here just to get some of the housekeeping out of the way while we wait for everyone else to get joined in. So just to start out with a quote, in preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. I love this quote. This is a quote that comes from D. Macker CISO. He likes using this prior to tabletop exercises because that's kind of the whole purpose of a tabletop exercise. It is to test things out whenever your team has breathing room and they can think and respond to situations so that they can build muscle memory and be able to respond to incidents with urgency and not panic. That's one of the biggest things you're trying to achieve by implementing tabletop exercises for internal benefits. But as always, we make any forward-looking statements during today's session. Take it with a grain of salt. Final form, function, and delivery dates may change. Everybody is on mute just to preserve the recording quality of today's session, so we may be able to make it available later for distribution. But do not hesitate to ask questions throughout the session. Use the questions panel. I'll have an eye on it, and I'll try to answer those questions as they come in. For anybody that's joining us for the first time, you've never had the pleasure of encountering this thick Southern accent. I'm Lewis Pope, one of the head nerds at N-able. My focus is on security and compliance. I've been in the MSP space myself for about 14, 15 years at this point. Started out in more the IT business consultancy arena. Eventually worked my way up through and helped mature this business into a full MSP before joining with N-able about 7 years ago, where I've been helping out. Well, a lot of wisdom sharing and helping other people get through that same security and operations maturation process that we're having to go through as MSPs and IT professionals in response to the threat landscape of the day. So to start out here, some base knowledge and understanding so that we can properly position tabletops and why they're important. Well, first is let's just talk about the incident response life cycle. There is this ever turning over cycle of you have to go through for your incident response: preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. This little IR cycle is always running multiple times a day for your teams. Every single time they get just about every single support ticket or security event alert that gets elevated or escalated to something that needs to be addressed. Almost all of them are going to go through this incident response life cycle, whether you have it documented and well regimented or not. Your teams are doing this. Are they doing it blindly? Question worth asking. Are they doing it without direction? Another question worth asking. But make sure you're keeping that in mind, that this is one of the biggest things that we're trying to test with tabletop exercises is this incident response capabilities that you have built up through standardization, through SOPs, workflows, incident response plans, and playbooks, and just the knowledge that exists in the head of your teams. So just as let's get the temperature of the room. We're going to throw out a poll really quickly of, have you conducted or do you have an incident response plan? This is useful for me just so I know who the audience is. And also it's useful for you to hear what your peers are currently sitting, or where they're currently sitting at. We'll give this just a few, 30 seconds or so, and we'll share those results. All right, so 30 seconds, and we're going to share those results. So there we go. 52% yes, 27% no, and 22% it lives in my head. I am absolutely one of those members in a former life of the 22%. A lot of what my MSP did lived, one of our biggest challenges, it lived in somebody's head, how to deal with something. And it was always a challenge to get it out and on paper and documented. So, if you feel like you're behind the curve, don't worry. You're not exactly in bad company here. There are tons of others that are also in the middle of this situation of figuring out and understanding. Yes, we do need to document this. Yes, we do need to start having formalized processes for these things. All right. So thank you for the feedback, everybody. So that gets us to, what really is inside of an incident response plan and what should be a part of it. Really, you should make sure that you have the purpose and scope of it defined for an incident response plan. That's going to change depending upon the size of your operations in your business, whether you're internal IT or your MSP or MSSP or some other form of outsourced IT support. Roles and responsibilities for everybody involved, including, any third parties that may have obligations, your communication protocols, who's going to call who and when and why, how you're going to classify your incidents and prioritize them, the general response procedures, things you're going to do around training for this incident response plan. How often are you going to review it and apply improvements to it based on, application in the field and feedback and observations. There are a ton of, templates out there for incident response plans. Feel free to use them as guides, but I absolutely 100% recommend that you do not take a template and just run with it. You need to read it, understand it, customize it, and tailor it for your operations. But also it is probably within your best interest to also have it vetted by whoever handles your governance and risk functions, or even your own legal counsel. Then there are cybersecurity incident response playbooks. Playbooks are much more detailed procedures. They give you the technical guidance on how to deal with a specific scenario. So you should absolutely have a ransomware playbook. You should have a very specific business email compromise playbook. You should have a specific payroll diversion fraud playbook. And have those technical details and the decision making already laid out for the team. So the people that are having to respond to an incident during the middle of an incident don't have to spend their time and their energy and their efforts figuring out what they should do in response. Their options for response and what they can do and what they should do should already be figured out. Because again, you want the team executing with urgency and a sense of direction, and not redundancy or duplication of efforts. You want it to be practiced, and you want it to be very regimented in practice, not a panic because everything's burning down around you. So why are tabletops important for operations and security outcomes? They're good for identifying gaps in plans and processes. They help build muscle memory and practice. Practice makes perfect. The more often your team does it, the better. Um, and also, it helps you evaluate your technologies and your tools are fit for purpose. This is how you find out about your gaps. That's one of the biggest things it gives you is that ability to find where you're falling short on being able to uh, protect, detect, or respond to a particular new tactic, technique, or procedure that's being used by threat actors. Of course, direct benefits for MSPs. If you're an MSP or an MSSP, you absolutely should be conducting. Um, you absolutely should be conducting them internally for yourself. This helps get that institutional knowledge. Everybody, there's quite a bit of people, 22%, where it's living in our heads. It is a good way of starting to get that knowledge out of people's heads and on paper. Um, It also helps improving coordination, communication internally. Again, making sure you're not no redundancy of efforts or doubling of efforts. Also, it helps make sure your teams understand what their actual remit is and what they should be doing into a scenario or for a given scenario, because there's always a chance that your team members, whoever they are, whatever role they may be in, chances are they're very helpful. And they may decide that they're going to be helpful during a situation and and spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours investing effort into something only to turn around and figure out that, we shouldn't have been doing that. That would have been under the remit of the incident response team that was called in via the insurance claim manager. And, we just spent 6 or 7 hours of time doing stuff that we're not going to get paid for because the insurance isn't going to pay for it. So there are tons of very practical business reasons, not just security outcome reasons, why you should be conducting tabletops internally with your entire teams. If you are an MSP or an MSSP, there should be yearly tabletop exercises for the entire organization, if not more often, if you can afford to do it. So here's another question again, so we can kind of get a feel for the room. Our temperature check is who has conducted internal IT or internal TTXs? So this is, have you done one internally for yourself? Whether you're an MSP or internal IT. I'll let this go for a few seconds. And while we're going for this, yes, to address the question that came in, the webinar is being recorded. We should be able to make that available later. But also, make sure you have access to Enable Me and Enable University, because there are tons of boot camps and other training materials available there on this very subject and others. Wealth of knowledge and wisdom there. Make sure you have access to it. All right. So about 90% of you have not done internal TTXs. Well, yeah, kind of expected. If you're here today, you are hopefully here to learn about doing them. If you've already been doing tabletop exercises, great. You may take away a few pointers and some few additional assets for today. But if you've never done them before, my goal is to really to make you more comfortable and give you the things you need to get started on it. All right. So now for the MSPs and MSSPs in the room, why should you conduct your tabletops with your clients? One of the core questions your clients have about you is going to be, how are you protecting me? And by involving clients or prospects in a tabletop that is geared towards their business, you can generate goodwill and engagement with them you otherwise might not be able to build while answering that very important question that they have. I sometimes hear MSPs say they don't have the time to sit down and explain to a client exactly what they're doing, what they're going to do in a step by step in response to a given scenario that the client is worried about. If this is you, take it as a challenge. Turn that client request into an opportunity to perform a TTX with them and potentially, hopefully generate revenue off of it. From your client's point of view, Rome is burning down if they ever get hit by a ransomware attack. But you're going to need them to navigate calmly through that existential crisis their business faces. And you really are only going to be able to do that if you have rehearsed the scenario with them and they know what their responsibilities and their expectations are. So helping build out that stakeholder confidence that we have things handled. We know how to respond. We know what we're doing. Also, performing tabletops helps to promote your image as taking cybersecurity seriously, promoting a culture of security to your clients and pulling back the curtain on what it takes to appropriately manage risk by performing a tabletop with them is as effective, if probably not more effective, at convincing them of the need to enhance cybersecurity protections than any marketing dollar you can ever spend on them. You're placing them in a scenario where they are accountable for their decisions and potentially highlighting how their decisions to save a few dollars on security services can result in a crisis for the business. That also goes for internal IT. If you can turn your challenges and your concerns into compelling tabletop scenarios and exercises that can speak the language of the CISOs or the chief financial officers or the business owners, you'll find yourself in a much better position to convey your desires and what should be done to properly manage or reduce risk in the environments you're charged with taking care of. Also, this can be just straight up as a billable service for you of an MSP. Um, and also, it can help raise your community involvement and profile if you're, at the size where it's appropriate for you. Go to your local chambers of commerce, go to your local business groups, offer to perform tabletops with them. This is, your direct access to potential new clients, sometimes for absolutely free. Go do a lunch and learn with a chamber of commerce or another business group. So, another poll really quickly, just to take the temperature. Have you conducted tabletops for a third party? So, if you're an MSP, have you done it for a customer? If you're internal IT, have you ever hired somebody in externally or have you participated in another company's tabletop because you have shared responsibilities? And again, we'll leave this up for about 30 seconds, get the feedback. There we go. No surprise here. About 70% for no and 29% for yes. So not unexpected for today's audience. So now we're going to start getting into some resources. I want you to be able to, walk away with something useful, something that you can lay hands on today and start working with. So I have a living list of resources that I maintain. Here is the QR code for it and the URL. I will update this with useful answers here and there, with useful links here and there. A lot of the direct downloads for some of the materials I'm going to be talking about is there. In addition to, make sure you check out the handouts section. In the handout section, you should find a couple of resources. One of those resources is going to be a facilitator guide. for a particular scenario, plus a sample PowerPoint deck on how I do some tabletops. There also will be note taker forums and feedback and after action reports and a template for an improvement plan. These are the things that usually, as you do tabletops over time, as you get more experience with them, and these are the little extra things you start adding to it to improve the process, to make it more efficient, to yield better results and outcomes for you. But, and you'll see this a little bit later, you don't have to take that approach. A full-blown tabletop exercise can be, hundreds of pages of documentations. It can be a 3-day affair. It can involve the fire marshal. It can involve the local, the FBI field office representative. It can involve your insurance company or claims manager. It can include, your local town chamber. It's just tabletops do not have to be that limited. You can involve a lot of people in them and make them very complicated, or you can make them really simple, fun affairs. And of course, the value of doing each approach, there's values to each approach giving on your situations and scenarios. All right. So first resource that I'm going to point you towards is going to be the CISA Tabletop Exercise Package. This is targeted towards critical infrastructure and public safety. This is probably the deep end on materials, but it's very useful stuff to see about, okay, if I'm going to do a formal regimented tabletop, what would it involve? This is a great example. It helps address areas of improvement, threats, issues, and concerns that affected parties may have. Also, it helps gaining in understanding issues faced during and after an incident. They're really good with their scenarios about explaining things. And of course, if you're an MSP or you're internal IT, you're good at taking resources and things that were meant for enterprise and applying them to your environments. No different here. This represents knowledge and wisdom that you have access to in these resources. That's hundreds of hours of work that you can take advantage of. So this is a direct link to the CISA CTEP packages. And what's included in it, and I'm going to spend just a little time highlighting these because, well, these are all great ideas for things that you can include with a tabletop, with the preparatory work beforehand, afterhand, to improve the quality of the exercise itself, the outcomes you're going to get out of it, but also, the more polish you put on the delivery of a service. So if you're going to conduct tabletop exercises as part of your services, the more polish you can put on it, the more expensive it's going to feel and look. And it is not unheard of for large tabletop engagements to run thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands, depending on size and who's going to be involved in it. But in the CTEPs, there's a welcome letter that explains the program. There's an exercise plan or handbook, which is a great resource if you're going to think about building out tabletops yourself. There's a facilitator and evaluator handbook, an invitation letter template, brief exercise slide deck, participant feedback forms, a planner feedback form, and after action improvement plan templates. These are all things, again, you don't have to use these, but they are good free resources. Yep, and I'll get you guys some, actually, let me go ahead and, since some people are saying there's a issue with the QR code, let me get that sorted and available for everybody really quickly. Let's go back to that QR code. So if it's this QR code, Linktree Cybersecurity, this is the one I would use as the master to find everything else. And I'm going to check that one real quick to make sure that one's still live and working. Okay, so the link tree is working. If the CISA Direct is not working, go follow this link, and it should have links in it here for all of the individual resources that we're going to be pointing out in the rest of the session. All right. It looks like we got that sorted. Yeah, everybody should still be able to get the resources. No problem. All right. So the exercise planner handbook, again, I recommend this is a weekend read, something to just digest and get through for the first time. Really good resource, kind of explains tons of the principles in depth. There is the invitation letter template. Again, this is small things you don't think about doing. How do how fancy is this soiree going to be? Are you advertising a potluck, or are you inviting everybody to a high end wedding? Think about the image and the not just a branding image, but what are you presenting about the value of this engagement? If you don't even bother to send people a nice invitation letter. Um, there's also the brief slide deck, which is a template for the exercise. Again, useful to look through for the first time to get a feel for a facilitator that's going to use that a facilitator will use to guide participants through the exercise. There's a participant feedback form. I cannot overstate the importance of making sure you get these filled out and back to you, because of the fact that you don't want to lose this feedback. If you are a facilitator, if you're running a tabletop, you are going to be too involved to take all of the notes, to take notice of things that are happening, all the things that are happening in the room. So you're going to need to rely on the participants to, take their own personal notes and their own personal observations on during the event, and to provide it back to you on feedback form so you can improve. Conducting tabletop exercises is, there's technical skills, technical knowledge. There's also soft skills and presentation and stage presence that goes into it. And if you're going to do it, those are things you need to improve on consistently and every time you do a tabletop. So feedback is going to be really important for you to improve what you're doing. Same with the exercise planner feedback form. Another, okay, post-mortem after event, what happened? What did I observe? Make sure you're documenting it. And then really the important things are the action reports and improvement plans. These are the deliverables. These are the things, these are the reports you're going to, if you're conducting this as a service, this is what you're charging for. And they can be, again, these can be very simple things, or these can be giant convoluted reports that are, 10, 15, 20 pages long. Scope appropriately. Don't oversell what you're going to be doing. Don't just drop this in some poor soul's lap. Tell them that they need to start conducting tabletop exercises with your stakeholders or with customers and not give them the time or resources to be able to build out the necessary reports. It may take them 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes, maybe even longer, depending on the size of the engagement, to prepare a full report. Again, figure that into your costing. So, also, CISA has cybersecurity scenarios available. They are based on threat vectors. So you can find different ones that are based on ransomware, insider threats, phishing, industrial control system compromises. Chances are, if you have, you will be able to find a scenario that is directly or adjacent to your concerns. These are, however, directed towards and kind of meant for critical infrastructure, and they may well be more than what you need for the small businesses that you support. That's fine. You can tailor these down. Also, so as someone mentioned, CompTIA, formerly CompTIA, GTIA now, they also have their tabletop exercise guidebooks. And they're not, and again, this is just all speaking to the fact that, yes, these things are, there's tons of things freely available. You shouldn't pay for any of these things out the gate. There's enough free materials and resources, enablement content that out there that you can get a hold of. So eventually you may need some paid for resources to conduct tabletop exercises, but to get started, to get familiar with them, no, this is a sweat equity exercise for somebody. And of course, some guidance before you do your first TTX. So this is going to be like, personal wisdom and experience here, from myself and also what I have heard from others. First, use these resources as guides. Avoid using raw templates. So one of the worst things you can do is take a raw template, go try to run a tabletop exercise with it, and then get lackluster results out of it because the scenario was like the given scenario was not applicable to the business or the organization. Everyone gets assigned a role and a responsibility, and by everybody I mean everybody: the business owner, the C-suite, who's going to be responsible for picking up food for the incident responders or the incident commanders or other resources that are going to be dedicated to business continuity operations. Who's making, literally who's making sure that they can stay on the job in their position and keep working, and another person goes gets them lunch. Choose whoever's going to be your facilitator. It needs to be somebody with good soft skills and can tell a good story. If you put a boring technical person in charge, I have been that boring technical person myself before, but if you put a boring person in charge of being the storyteller, they're going to tell a boring story. Avoid assigning your most technical resource as a facilitator, again, for the same reason. Your most technical resource, again, probably is going to be better used elsewhere in the exercise than the facilitator. Practice with your internal tabletops before you go off offering it to clients. Or conversely, if your internal IT, conduct smaller tabletops with your IT operations and security teams, and practicing it before you expand it to include C-suite board owners. And there's no single correct way to build and run a TTX. Basically, I think if you can have a conversation and tell a story, and you can figure out that you have at least a gap somewhere that you can go address, and you can go, address that gap, it was a successful tabletop exercise. As long as an actionable item that you can go and fix or repair, remediate or mitigate comes out of it, good job. And whenever you're conducting a tabletop, some rules of engagement. And again, this is wisdom and experience of myself, plus what I've heard from others. Do not take it personally. Egos get in the way of good tabletop exercises. So it's going to be a requirement of that, whoever the facilitator is, to be able to be a soft skills person manager as well, so that they can manage the room. So, remind everybody, don't take it personally. Don't fight the scenario. You don't want a technical resource in the room saying, well, this will never happen because. It's like, assume that it has happened and go from there. Play your role, not just your job. So whatever role you're assigned during the tabletop exercise, make sure that's the role you're playing. Don't get caught up in technical details. So again, don't let your technical resources take you down a rabbit hole. They should be thinking about execution and the execution of the incident response plans and playbooks and testing them, not what they know they would do in a situation, because they're smart enough to know that they should do it. Speak up, encourage people in the room to speak up, and to raise issues or informations or any ahas or realizations that they make during it. Set these expectations early. You don't want to have to stop during the middle of you don't really have to stop in the middle of a scenario in order to scold people because they're being rowdy. Use real world headlines, go find, the current TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, or a, security research paper, or a CISA security alert about a recent attack. Take what that attack was based on and build your scenario around it. Remember, everybody, it's a no blame environment. Again, that's for the technicals. Try to make sure that they don't get into blaming games of, well, I take care of my stuff and this thing, so therefore this would never happen to me. It would only happen because of, this other team's actions. Be entertaining. As a facilitator, you have to run the room. If you lose their interest, well, you've lost their interest. They're going to stop paying attention. And also adjust pacing based on engagement. You have to be able to pivot during the scenario, during the tabletop, to, again, maintain the attention of the room. And that leads me to one of the biggest things that I think I've come away with about tabletops, especially shorter format tabletops, is tabletop exercises should not be boring. They should not be something where eyes start glassing over in the first 15 or so minutes. So to help with that, something I've been working on for the past couple of months, and we're going to be formalizing it and making it available in the future. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to raise your hand for early access to these. I have been developing the N-able Cyber Resiliency Adventures. These are small, short format tabletop exercises, or really games more than anything else. These are meant usually to be exercises you can get through with just an hour's time. And quite honestly, they are built to be entertaining. This one is based on the Great Plains Cattle Company heist, where you have to, it's a gamified deck. So you have to explore a map and find the clues that lead you to the different indicators of compromise, to the different pivots and injections. This one is one that goes from a click fix delivery on a third-party compromised website all the way down to payroll diversion fraud, because the attackers had access to HR systems. Then we have another one that is spooky themed, where you encounter a potential gallery of different monsters that you can encounter. So insider threats, shadow IT, technical debt monster, things that can potentially go bump in the night. And with all these resources, again, we have these very, they're again meant to be engaging, they're meant to be entertaining, they're meant to get people's attention. So this is going to be one of the poll questions. Here we go. So, would you be interested in getting early access to the cyber resiliency adventure materials? I have been testing these out. I've received very good C-suite and board level feedback on these. So far this year, average, out of the 10-point rating so far, they've been getting very solids, 7 and 8s. So I'll be making these available later, probably in early Q1, but it won't just be these decks. It would also be additional decks and resources. These are going to be, again, they will come with the slide decks and a facilitator guide to help you use it. And these are they're fun, entertaining. They're meant to engage with your C-suite and your board members. And since they only take about an hour, you should be able to also teach your sales teams to be able, or at least some members of your sales organizations and teams should be able to also run these as well. All right. So thanks for the feedback, everybody. Once those do become available, expect to see an email, let you know those are available and how to obtain them. All right. So we're going to do a quick review here of any pending questions in the chat in case I haven't addressed those. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to throw those in the chat. I'll take the time to address those here in the last 15 minutes of the hour we have. I give anybody, whether it's something we touched on today or we didn't quite get back to, whatever it may be, feel free to throw those into the chat or into the questions, and I'll take that time to answer those for you. All right. Doesn't look like there's too many questions that we. Yeah. So, so if you told me you would like early access to this, I will be personally sending you an email sometime in the future to let you know that they're available for early access. And I'm going to be mainly doing that to facilitate feedback so that I can make changes and improvements before we make it available in Enable Me or somewhere else as a permanent download. All right, and I got a few asks here for this. So here is the Linktree link for a bunch of continually updated resources around. There'll be tabletop exercises, risk management, compliance. Links in there for the CISA plus stuff from SANS Institute and some other things as well. And then also, if you do not have any questions for relating to today's session, I'm going to throw back out my email. So for anybody that wants to track me down directly, lewis.pope@n-able.com. More than happy to entertain any direct questions. Also, you can find me out on LinkedIn at the Security Pope. And and just for awareness for anybody that didn't catch it, the CISA CTEPS QR code, everything that's listed there is available behind the TTX resources QR code and link that I have up on the screen right now. All right, everybody. Doesn't look like we got any other questions coming in. So thank you for taking the time to spend, just a short hour with us today. We did only have, an hour to cram in all of this. Of course, we're not going to be cram all of this in. So just as a final call to action here, if you are interested in checking out any of N-able's other solutions, whether it's N-able MDR, Adlumin, breach prevention, our ITDR solution, our Pass Portal, which is our password and documentation management, DNS filtering, which is our DNS and content filtering solution, MDR, which is our Adlumin MDR, which is our SIM SOC XDR SOAR platform that provides you 24/7 SOC services with the ability to be able to do additional triage, remediation, and isolation of devices and actions against users in Entra ID and in Active Directory. So for anybody that is facing the challenges of, we can't do true 24/7 security operations. We can only do monitoring 24/7 and somebody's on call. Our Adlumin MDR offering solves that problem for you. But also it incorporates, multiple licenses for multiple different products. So you don't have to go buy a different SIM. You don't have to worry about the cost of the data storage in the SIM or the ingress charges. We charge you a flat rate for it. You don't have to worry about your syslog volume growth because we're not going to charge you based on the amount of data you put into the SIM from your syslog sources. There's also a bunch of other nice features in the platform for resiliency, helping you discover whenever you have unsafe shares, whenever a junior technician at some point in the past set up a file share with full control and everyone has access. Stale accounts, user and entity behavioral analytics for picking out unusual user behaviors in an environment, such as, accessing systems or logging into systems they usually don't access, lateral movement, things of that nature. So thank you for the feedback there. For anybody that would like to get more information from us on any of our portfolio of services or tools, as always, do not hesitate to reach out to us to ask any questions you may like, regardless of whether it's directly N-able platform tools or services related or not. Feel free to reach out to me. Hope you got some value out of today's session. Any follow-ups, reach out to me directly. And also keep an eye out for a survey after today's, and please take the time to fill that out. That'll provide us with information, provide me with information and N-able with information so we can make this kind of content better and more efficient for you. If anybody came in late, the session is being recorded. It'll be made available at a later time. But also check out N-able You and N-able Me for boot camps and other training materials on boot camps there as well. So again, we appreciate your time is very valuable as an MSP, as an internal IT provider. Thank you very much for choosing to spend an hour of your day with us. Hopefully it was valuable for you. And if not, hey, give us the honest feedback. Let us know what you would have rather seen or what you would have needed from today's session. And One more thank you to everybody for attending not only the Cyber Resiliency Summit, but today's session as well. And hopefully we will see you on future N-able events, webinars, boot camps, or masterclasses.